everybody, this is TUSDarryl, and welcome to my review of Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight, a game where you take a leaf and you hit things and hope it solves your problems. Jokes aside, let's get into the brief story here. And by brief, I really mean you're a priestess who comes to this land to cure the curse that's there and, well, dispel the curse that's there. That's about it, for the most part, if I were to put it in a very dense, very condensed nutshell. Now, this game, I don't know if it has anything to do with the other games, but it is part of a series. So I'm not sure if it is one of those games that's like, okay, the first game has this story, the second game has this story, the third game has this story, and this is the fourth installment. So I'm not sure if it all carries and bridges together in a cohesive unit, or if it's like Final Fantasy and each game has its own little story to it. That much I'm not too sure of, but what I said before is the story or the gist of what this game is about. Moving on to graphics. There's not much to say about graphics in this sense. If you really love pixel art, it looks really good. I really like pixel art. So at first when I saw maybe a screenshot or two, I thought, but then you realize that the game has many different zones you can visit, and each one has its own atmosphere. Each zone can be its own game, in a way. But being a Metroidvania, you can go anywhere you want for the most part, even with consequence. Most of the time with consequence. Do not go running through this game like la 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 la, I'm not going to have any problems. You're going to run into some problems sometimes, literally. But going back to the graphics, the game looks beautiful. There's a lot of depth to it. Lots of really well done shading jobs. I don't know how to put that. I really don't, and it bothers me to an extent that I don't know how to put that. But let's just say that the graphics are really pleasing to the eye, and I have very little complaints about it. The interface in and of itself is clear and not intrusive at all. In fact, it's aesthetically pleasing, if I can say that word right. Moving on to sound. There's not much to say about this game in terms of sound, but the sound is done really well. I just don't have much to say in that regard when it comes to the sound. It's what you come to expect. Now, I do like the sound effect that comes up when you strike something with your leaf. It has a nice impact to it when you hit things. It's very satisfying. As for the music in the game, the music is very sparse. It's more ambient than anything else, but it gives each area its own identity. If you're trying to make me feel a certain mood between one zone and another zone and another zone and another zone, you're doing a great job. Because some zones make you feel a little more, I can do this. Yeah, I think I can do this. And others make you wish you had turned around. Moving on to gameplay. Now, at first glance, this game may not seem like it has a lot going on. You think you might have your basic, I can hit you with my leaf by hitting, if you're playing with a controller, which I really think you should play with a controller when you play this game. The keyboard and mouse, those controls aren't bad, and you can remap the buttons to make them more comfortable. It's just when you're used to one style, after a while, it can get a little But I would definitely recommend this game with a controller. That said, gameplay-wise, the game is actually pretty fun, really addictive. I couldn't say much about the graphics, I couldn't say much about the sound, but I can talk for days about the gameplay. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but just the variety of bosses and the mechanics that you have to learn, because you will die in this game a lot. I made a joke about that a few times in my playthrough in the beginning, because of how often I died. Sometimes for stupid reasons that are on me mainly. But these bosses in the game, like, they'll wreck you if you're not really sure about how to fight them. And they'll wreck you from the get-go, just from that, or at least they wrecked me. I couldn't fight half the bosses in the game without dying at least once, and then getting the hang of how some of them fight. I have my favorites. I'm not biased at all by one of them. But the others, there are a couple bosses in there that were a little underwhelming because their mechanics were a little, I guess I want to say on the simplistic side. That said, they were still good bosses to fight. Now, talking about general mobs, the mobs are strategically placed. Sometimes you'll get backstabbed. In fact, you'll get backstabbed a lot. If you play Dark Souls or any game that's like a Metroidvania or any game that encourages you to go explore and things might sneak up and hit you from behind and whatnot, that's what you've got to expect that in this kind of game. You have to expect that in Momodora. because there are enemies that are going to come out of nowhere and hit you, and you're not going to know where they came from. Eventually, though, because enemies respawn every time you re-enter an area, eventually you'll get used to it. You get used to it. And then you have a bunch of other items and abilities and whatnot, buffs you can use in the game. I personally loved using the bow because in this kind of game, I prefer range over straight up, I'm going to hit you with my leaf combat. The game also doesn't hold your hand when it comes to exploration. They'll give you some hints. There'll be some NPCs around the map to tell you about what happened. You'll give you some lore and whatnot. But most of the time, you're going to want to go find that yourself. It may seem a little off-putting to some people, but I guarantee you won't be disappointed because every area, for the most part, is really fun to explore. And the boss battles, again, just the presentation of the boss battles, those are the most memorable thing for me. And when you can get your bosses right and your exploration right for this kind of game, in my opinion, you did Metroidvania well. The story may be a little bit light in this game, but everything else in the game makes up for it gameplay-wise. I want to go into more detail about it, but I'll just go right into it. How I feel about the game, I believe this game is a go for it. If you're a fan of Metroidvanias, then I highly suggest you pick it up. If you're a fan of freedom and exploration and whatnot in a game, I can recommend Momodora. If you don't think you'll like the pixel art, I'd say still give it a go because the game is only $10. Right now, speaking for right now at this moment, while the Steam summer sale is going, it's running for $6. But the game is just $10. For $10, and you get about 4 hours main game, or 4 hours main story, playtime, and a couple of hours more for like stuff you do on the side and whatnot, because I took my time with the game and went everywhere, and it felt like it was going on forever. If you're down for that kind of game, if you're down for this kind of game, then I recommend this game to you. So all in all, I highly recommend Momodora to people who like Metroidvanias and games that will give them a challenge, or games that lean more on the 2D art style side and whatnot, but give you a variety of things to work with in gameplay, because gameplay is surprisingly in-depth, as are the boss battles. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll catch you guys later. See ya!